Okay guys, well we're going to start part 1 of our Coptic binding. So this is what we're going to accomplish together when we meet next week. What you're going to need for the first part of Coptic binding, which is to make your covers, is PVA glue, bone folder, I use a ballpoint pen, utility knife. You're also going to need a straight edge, your binder's board, right? So your binder's board is actually longer and you're gonna have to cut it in half, and we'll go over that again in class. You're gonna need your decorative end papers for this as well. So now that we have everything we need, let's get started. So after you cut your binder's board, the first thing that we're gonna do is take our decorative paper and we're going to trace the board. And that's where the ballpoint pen comes in handy because it makes it easier to see. Pretty simple. Just trace the board. Once you do that, then you're going to take your straight edge and you're going to extend every line to the edge of your page. Just like this. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if you need help remembering how to cut a straight edge on a piece of binder's board, make sure you go back to the video that I made for that and review it before you come to class. Okay, so now what you ought to see are 4 little squares. Our next step is to very carefully cut those squares out. What I try to do is not go completely to the corner. So cut. Now for this, you're going to want to be really careful not to overcut, and you also have to move things around. So moving the paper around versus moving yourself around. So there's 1. And again, when I get close to that mark, the cross mark, I slow down a little bit. I kind of put the brakes on things so I can make sure that I don't overcut. You want to make sure that your blade is sharp for this, especially with this end paper because it's really old wallpaper, so it would probably have a tendency to shred if you use a dull knife. Now the knives that you have, you just break off the tip to get you to a sharp point. And we're almost through here. And 4. Okay, so now what we have, I'll turn it this way so everybody can see it. Woo. Now what we have is something that looks like this. The next thing that you need is a piece of your wax paper and your binder's board that you've already cut down. So I'm going to take my brush now. I had it in water because I was gluing some other stuff. You don't have to put it in water initially, although usually when you buy new brushes, they've got a little bit of sizing on them, so you might want to rinse it off, but you don't want to dip a really wet brush into your PVA, okay? So now I'm going to take my PVA straight, and I'm going to glue my board. And I'm making sure that I get enough glue, not too much glue, all the way out to the corner. So I've got a nice thin layer of glue on my binder's board. And then you always want to make sure that you have a paper towel or a rag handy to wipe your hands off. Then you want to move that wax paper and get a clean sheet of wax paper. Now remember that we use wax paper because glue won't dry on it, or stick, I'm sorry. And now we're going to turn this face down and put it inside the square that we drew. Then we're going to turn it over. And we're going to get another piece of wax paper. And we're going to use our bone folder with a piece of wax paper between it and the page. And we're going to push out all of the air. And also make sure that our end paper is nice and flat. Our next step is to put this under a little bit of weight. So usually that means a couple of books, textbooks. It doesn't have to be, 5 tons. Okay, so I'm gonna go put this under weight and I'll be back and we'll go to the next step.